Hello YouTube, it is your boy B3, back with another kicking movie reaction review. Today we are talking about Luca from 2021. Yeah, we're doing a Pixar movie today. He's like, oh, don't you usually do monster movies? And it's like, well, I mean, there's multiple sea monsters in this film, so that's that. But also, this is a very queer film, and I want to talk about it a lot from a queer perspective. I'm a pansexual, gender fluid druid myself, so I think it's important for me to talk about that because I think my take on Luca's queerness is maybe a bit different than I've seen around. So I do want to talk about that. But first, it is a Pixar film, good old Pixar, rated PG, comedy, fantasy, a little over an hour and 30 minutes. You can watch it now on Disney Plus, but it's also on YouTube, Google Play Movies and TV, Redbox, Vudu, and Amazon Prime Video. It has a 7.4 out of 10 on IMDb, a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 71% on Metacritic, with 81% of Google users saying they like the film. So, it's set in a beautiful seaside town on the Italian Riviera, and it's a coming-of-age story about a young boy experiencing an unforgettable summer filled with gelato, pasta, and endless scooter rides. Luca shares these adventures with his newfound best friend, but all the fun is threatened by a deeply held secret. He's a sea monster from another world, just below the water's surface. In the USA, it released in June 18th of 2021, directed by Enrico Casarosa, screenplay by Enrico Casarosa, Mike Jones, Jesse Andrews, and Simon Stevenson. Our cinematography was done by David Juan Bianchi and Kim White, distributed by Disney, obviously, and the box office was 49.8 million. Starring Jason Tremblay, Jack Dylan Grazer, Giacomo Giantoli, I'm trying my best here, people, Emma Berman, Jim Gaffigan, Maya Rudolph, Peter Sohn, and others. So, yeah, Luca, he's a sea monster that's curious about the surface world. And then he meets another sea monster kid who takes him to the surface world. They have fun, they have adventures. When his parents find out he's been to the surface and enjoys it, then they threaten to send him away to go live with his uncle. His uncle's fucking weird. So he runs away with this other boy, and they go to the surface world where they meet this girl. They're going to enter a race so that they can win prize money to get themselves a Vespa so that they can travel the world and whatnot. But Luca starts to want something different than his friend. He starts to want to go to school and learn things. But his friend, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to stick to their other plan, so he kind of becomes jealous because of the girl. He is jealous of her, specifically, because if Luca goes to school, that means he goes with her, right? And it eventually kind of ends with them both being outed, you could say, as sea monsters, and the town does come to accept them. Maybe not everyone in town, but the town does come to accept them for that. Luca does go to school with the girl, and the other boy stays. You might notice I'm not saying anyone's names but Luca. That's because his is the only one I remember. I'm terrible at names, both in movies, real life, pretty much anything you can think of. I'm terrible with names. Sorry, I just remember Luca's because he's the titular character. And this is, like, definitely a queer film. Even if it's not intentional, it's a queer film, for sure. And here's the thing. I've seen a lot of people argue against that. I've seen a lot of people argue for it because there's queer baiting and there's queer coding. Queer coding is when, like, queer creators insert queer themes into media, but they're kind of metaphorical, so they're not outright queer, which kind of sneaks them past censors and definitely, like, sneaks them past a conservative audience. So, a conservative audience won't, like, refuse to go see a movie, but it can still be about queer things, and they can get that cash and maybe even trick conservatives into becoming better people, But then there's queer baiting, which Disney does, like, a lot. admittedly, where it's like films will pretend to be queer to get queer people's money and then not actually be. Like, I saw an example from someone, this is actually a Pixar example, uh, where, like, in the Finding Dory trailer, you see two women looking into a stroller. And they think that was put in the trailer specifically to kind of trick queer audiences into thinking the movie would be queer, which would be easy to do since Ellen DeGeneres voiced Dory, and she is, in fact, a les of sorts. Uh, but, like, this movie doesn't really seem gay, but it does seem queer. I see so many people when they talk about this movie and just stuff in general equating queer to gay, and that's not the case. It's just not the case. Queer is a different word because it's a different thing. Gay is same sex attraction. Queer is rather different. And all right, I'm gonna do my best with this here. I am a part of this community, and I can speak for it. So, queer was kind of like a slur for homosexual for a while, and then the pride community kind of brought it in as official terminology, which is just a great fucking way to stick it to bigots. I'm really proud of whoever fucking thought of that for us, because holy shit, that was smart. Taking a slur, making it an official term, and then it can't be used as a slur anymore. Someone's like, "You damn queer," and it's like, yeah, for sure I am. It's smart as shit. I don't know whose idea that was, but you should get a fucking gay medal. But queer is like an all-encompassing term. It's just for people who aren't heterosexual or cisgender. So you can be queer, but not gay. Does that make sense? Because, like, take a trans woman, for instance. A trans woman that's attracted only to men would be a straight trans woman. She's not gay, but she is queer. I hope I'm explaining this well. You got it? So even if you aren't gay, you can be queer, and if you are queer, you don't have to be gay. Easy peasy. So, Luca, I feel like, is definitely a queer film. He gets curious, which is a way that a lot of people describe those of a different sexuality that are figuring it out. He's literally curious about the surface. And then, he meets this other boy. And a lot of people see their relationship as potentially homosexual. I didn't really see that. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really see it. I just saw it as best friends. And I've kissed a plenty boy in my day, let me tell you. It's true. I've kissed hella fellas. And honestly, I didn't see that. I didn't even see it really hinted at. Yeah, he's jealous of, the girl in the film, but that's because he sees her as taking his only friend. That's how I see that. And that does kind of seem to be the case. To me, anyways. Because there is kind of a coming out in this film. So the other boy goes into the water, and he kind of comes out as a sea monster to their little lady friend, and she freaks at first, but she, like, comes to terms with it, which is something that does kind of happen to queer people. Like, they'll come out to someone in their life, and that person won't take it well in the moment, but then they'll, like, learn. They'll do better, and they'll become better. My mom was like that. When my mom first found out that I was not a straight or a cis, she told me no one would ever love me. And now, she's probably my biggest supporter. She donates to LGBTQ charities, for Pride Youth. And that's true. So sometimes people can learn that they've made a mistake and change. And she kind of does that very quickly because Luca kind of turns on his friend and pretends not to be a sea critter, uh, which is a little fucked, to be completely honest. When Luca did that, I was like, dude, that was really fucked of you, man. How could you do that? But then, like, his friend tries to bring him an umbrella to help him in the race, and his friend kind of gets outed as a sea monster to the whole town, and they're gonna hurt him. And then, uh, you know, Luca has to reveal himself as a sea monster to save his friend. And then some of the people in town that spent time with them when they were in human form is like, because like they were actually living with a man who hunts sea monsters. And then when he sees them, he's like, his mind immediately changes about sea monsters because he knows these two boys well, better than most humans, seemingly better than most other sea creatures. And he's like, these aren't sea monsters, these are just boys, and they won the race or whatever. And that's something that people do in real life when they find out someone they know is queer as well. Like, this one hasn't as much happened to me, but I know people who they came out to someone that they knew thought like gay people were bad or something, and then that person almost on the spot changed their mind. That hasn't happened to me, but I know people that it's happened to, where they came out to someone and that person was like, their whole mind was blown because whenever they thought of someone gay, they thought of like some stereotype or some horrible thing that Fox News told them about gay people. And then they see that their friend is gay and they're like, but you're not the horrible thing that I was told gay people were. And they've changed their mind on the spot like that. I know people that has happened to. So, you know, I think this is true because Luca was keeping his real self literally under the surface of the water, but also under the surface of like his personality, trying to hide who he really is the whole film. And there's a line at the end where his grandmother tells his parents that he'll probably be fine on the surface world and not everyone will accept him, but he'll be able to find people who do. And if that line isn't meant for queer people, then I'm a fucking dipshit, honestly. That is definitely a line about queerness. 100, I can't see it as anything else. I honest to God can't. This movie has to be a metaphor for being queer. It just has to be. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, he goes with the girl at the end to go to school, and he doesn't stay with the boy. And it's like, dude, that doesn't mean he's not queer. Because he doesn't seem to have any romantic interest in the girl either. In this film, I don't feel a romantic connection between any characters that aren't like already married or something. Like the mom and dad, Luca's mom and dad obviously have something, but they're like already married. Duh, of course they do. But Luca doesn't seem to show a romantic attachment to anybody. And I think that's because it's not about being gay. The film is about being queer. Yeah, he doesn't stay with the boy and he goes with the girl, but then look at all the images in the after credits. I mean, they're not doing anything romantic. They're showing images of him the whole time, you know? None of it's romantic. It's just best friendy brother and sister stuff. And it does seem to be like more of a brother and sister relationship. In fact, it seems like all three of them now are siblings. You know? Because the other boy stays with the dad and lives with him because he's the strongest one. He can help the most with the fishing. And since he's from underwater, he actually helps the dad catch a lot of fish in the film because he knows where they all are at each different spot during the day. So he's able to help him catch a lot and make a profit and support his daughter. So they all kind of just become siblings because Luca goes off to school, but he stays with the girl and her mom. They're all three of them are more like siblings. It's not a love triangle. He just thought that he'd lose Luca, and he didn't lose Luca. He like, yeah, sure, Luca goes to school, but dude, he's gonna come back. Like whenever school is out, the girl comes to live with her dad and help him, and she enters the race and stuff. So Luca's gonna come back too. He's not gone forever. It's not like he had to choose between the two of them. Yeah, it's not what he originally went out to do, but like it's a very textbook Pixar ending, you know? Pixar films don't end like a lot of normal films would. Like in Onward, spoilers for Onward, he doesn't get to see his dad at the end of Onward. He gets to see him from a distance. He doesn't get to talk to him or do anything with him, really. But it's because everything that he wanted to do with his dad, he realizes his brother did for him growing up. And it's like these messages in these Pixar movies always really hit home because they don't have the fairy tale endings. They have these realistic endings in more like fantastical settings. You know what I mean? These things people can connect with, and so many queer people have connected with this film. Is there queer baiting in it? I don't think so. In fact, I would wager that this movie was queerer than it was, maybe even gay, and Disney probably axed a lot of stuff, I'd wager. Like, Disney is actively trying to sabotage the Owl House, even though the Owl House makes a fortune in merchandise. Do you know how hard they had to fight to make Lose Bisexual in Owl House? They had to fight really, really hard for that. Right? Usually if there's something gay in a Disney film, it's something that's like 2 seconds and they can cut it out so they can ship it to China. It's just queer baiting. Like in Beauty and the Beast. You know, they're like, oh, LeFou's gay. Fuck you. But then, like, what does he do that's gay? Like, in a choreographed dance, he accidentally ends up dancing with a guy. Is that... It wasn't even intentional in the story. I mean, he seems happy to be doing it, but that's not really, like, super progressive or anything. And then look at Disney's Solo: A Star Wars Story, where they say that they have a pansexual character. Lando's pan, ta-da. But does Lando, is that portrayed in literally any way? No. And you could say, oh, Lando had feelings for a droid, that makes him pan. It's like the droid with the voice of a woman, the body type of a woman, and the mannerisms of a woman, that droid? No, that droid was a lady. For sure. Pronouns and all, it seemed. So, I wouldn't call Lando pan in that film. I would call that queer baiting. But this film, I think, is definitely queer-coded. It's not gay, but it is queer. And look at the whole found family concept of it. Queer people all over the world have to find a new family because their families are fucking bigots and don't want them. It's true. It's absolutely true. Because, I mean, getting sent away to go live with a distant family member is something that happens to queer kids all the time. Either that or they end up homeless or horribly abused. You know? Queer kids getting sent away to live with another relative so the parents don't have to deal with their queerness is something that has happened for decades. It's a horrible thing. It's true, though, that it happens. It does. And queer kids running away happens. Queer kids being homeless happens. But queer kids finding families that actually do care about them for who they are, that happens too. That happens too, and I'm glad it does happen. Honest to God, I'm glad it does happen. I mean, it's just, that's what happens. I mean, his parents do come to accept him by the end. But by accepting him, because his parents have to accept, you know, the land part of him, and the land people have to accept the sea part of him, you know? So it's this is the queerest movie. It's so queer. Once again, I don't think it's gay. I don't think there's any romance in the film at all. I think it's just about finding a new family and new friends that love you for who you are. And not only is that a good message for queer people, but it's a good message for everybody. I mean, there are, you know, I know people whose parents hate them just because they voted for someone different than they have. Like, what insane. I know people whose parents have legit actually disowned them just for dating someone of another race. This film applies on so many levels, but the most level, like the message applies to a million things, but the film itself, it's queer. I can't see it as anything else. I think it's queer coded. It's just not gay coded. And that's fine, because when a lot of people think of queerness, they just think of gay. But there's so much more out there than gay. As I said, I'm pan. I'm gender fluid. And this message really hit home. Gay and bi and les aren't the only things out there. So that's it. Thank you all very much for your support. I know I talked entirely about queer stuff for this film, but I mean, that's clearly what it's about, right? But the writing and animation were both great. I mean, there are Pixar movies I like more, but there are certainly ones I like worse. It's a good film. It's a genuinely good film with a genuinely good message, and one that's needed probably now more than ever. So that's it. Thank you all very much for your support. Remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. Check out all the cool links in the description below. Sorry this one was so long. I know this one was much longer than usual, over 20 minutes, but I needed to say all those things. I really needed to say them. That's it. Thank you all once again, and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.